So I'm here recording at my parents' house. No, not the house I grew up in, just where my parents currently live, having some family time. And using this bit of downtime to record something real quickly, to share something with you. So on Christmas Day, the Deputy White House Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, also known as Mr. Nosferatu, was complaining about immigrants, just the thing he does. He complains about immigrants. He was complaining about immigrants. Watched the Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra Family Christmas for my kids. Imagine watching that and thinking America needed infinity migrants from the third world. Now, that's a weird thing to tweet on Christmas Day. But one of the ironies of this, of course, that Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin are themselves children of immigrants. Their parents were both born in Italy. And Italy at the time, in the early 20th century, wasn't what you'd call a developed country. Italy at the time was a developing nation. It was quite impoverished. If you want a taste of the kind of deep poverty that defined Italian society, you could actually watch The Godfather. When Michael goes to Sicily while the heat dies down, that gives you a pretty good sense. A movie I love, Rocco and His Brothers by the Italian auteur Visconti, also gives you a taste of the kind of deep poverty that defined mid-century and early 20th century Italy. So this is just a weird thing to say about Martin and Sinatra, who in a real sense were the third world migrants of their day. But the other thing is that Miller is clearly hearkening back to some imagined time of cultural unity. But it's worth watching some of the products of that cultural time, including ones involving Frank Sinatra. Here's something Sinatra recorded in 1946, and it really exemplifies post-war, perhaps a golden age, American public morality.
Your blood's the same as mine. Mine's the same as his. Do you know what this wonderful country is made of? It's made up of 100 different kind of people, and 100 different ways of talking, and 100 different ways of going to church. But they're all American ways.
This is the opposite of what Miller envisions. It isn't this rigid notion of nationalism. It is a notion of pluralism and acceptance and tolerance. I think the way to square this circle for a guy like Stephen Miller is that he's principally talking about white people, and I want to really emphasize the quotations here. Whiteness as an imagined community of racial unity. So when you begin to push back against this notion of a all-encompassing pan-European whiteness and focus on specific groups of people, specific ethnic traditions, specific origins, specific circumstances, specific histories, it all falls apart, right? And you can see this just in the historical record. When Frank Sinatra's parents came to the United States, they weren't considered white in the same way that, for example, someone of English or German or Northern European extraction would have been considered white. But Stephen Miller's ideology requires one to collapse all of these distinctions. It requires one to take, again, this artificial category designed to exclude and naturalize it and lift it up as being the defining category of what makes an American. I, of course, think that is ridiculous, but the unfortunate thing is that this notion has a lot more purchase than I would happen to like. So it's a live political battle to push back against it and to remind people that there are other bases for American unity that don't require one to exclude. And in fact, a universalistic vision of America, one rooted in this nation's history of pluralism, in this nation's, at its best, history of tolerance, is, I think, much more sustainable than whatever blood and soil bullshit Stephen Miller is on.